Good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you are. Today we have Erin Isaacson from Pacific Crest Digital Solutions, and she's going to join us with answering some questions that we have in this interesting interview. So, Erin, what do you do? How long have you been doing this?
Yeah, so I started a technical writing business. We specialize in assisting organizations with developing and organizing their policy and procedural documentation, such as SOP manuals, training materials, employee manuals, those type of items. So I actually started my business right at the beginning of the pandemic in 2020. And last year I was able to leave, focus on it full time, and we're officially LLC'd, and it's been a crazy journey.
So awesome. That sounds great. But did you have any input because of the because of COVID?
It was an interesting because so basically I started like literally January 2020 and then everything shut down really quickly. So I ended up landing a couple of businesses, a couple of clients pretty quickly. And then when the pandemic hit, I lost everything because they lost their clients. So it was kind of like, okay, well, how do we pivot and what do we do from here? And it's just been a lot of, journeying and figuring what is hitting, and starting a business right at the beginning of the pandemic was definitely an interesting, no one could have saw that coming, right?
Of course, and also that coming. And what kind of actions did you take because of the pandemic?
I think it was a lot of switching gear, trying to determine like what businesses were really needing these assistance. And I think in a lot of ways, I think in some ways, COVID may have helped me a little bit just because of the area and the nature of what I do. And a lot of, especially with COVID and after COVID, it's been a lot of turnover for a lot of companies, which has made a lot of companies realize that their training material isn't quite up to what it needed to be. And so I've been able to come in and kind of help businesses redefine that, reestablish training material, and kind of help, save time and money when it comes to training employees.
Outstanding. So tell me about your customers. What's your best customer? What kind of customer do you prefer?
I do have a range. I do tend to work with a lot more technical companies, like a lot of IT companies. I've worked with construction companies, but I've also worked with online businesses, especially like solopreneurs that are looking at the stages where they are starting to bring on and train teams to work with them. And then I've also worked with, large construction and development companies with 100 plus that realize that, hey, we need our entire SOP manual created because that never got done. So I am a little all over the place, but I would say I do work a little bit more with the technical companies and trying to capture their technical procedures.
Oh, outstanding. Okay. And when you were growing up, is this what you always wanted to do?
I think in a way, yes and no. I think I've always kind of have a knack for writing, and I always wanted to be a writer. And then early in my career, I learned very quickly that I had an aspiration to become a business owner. So I think it's kind of like married like the beginning of my career and kind of my childhood dreams. And I think overall, if I could go back and talk to little me, she'd probably be proud.
Awesome. And do you have any favorite quotes in life?
Favorite codes in life?
Yeah, quotes or sayings in life.
I think a lot of it is just to be present. I think that especially going through the last couple of years and the craziness it has been, my mental health practices have been everything. And one of those has been my meditation and just making sure that I remain present and not getting too out in the crazy. One of my favorite quotes is a Lao Tzu quote, and it is, if you are depressed, you live in the past. If you are anxious, you live in the future. If you are at peace, you live in the present. So that's kind of a code and something I've always tried. And if I ever feel my mind starting to wander, it's just breathe and be present and just recentering yourself.
Perfect. And let me ask you another thing. What kind of issues did you have to overcome? Like, what's the biggest thing that you have to go overcome in your business?
So for me, and the biggest thing I've had to is really just trying to develop a consistency. And I think that especially when you come from a more technical standpoint of, I've always worked operations, and yeah, I've because of that, I've been able to help. And I mean, my business is, looking at other businesses, procedures, and policies, and what lessons can I take in regards to my own. But I think for me, my biggest struggle has been sales. I mean, I'm not a marketer, I'm not a salesperson. Developing the right packages for ongoing services and what that's going to look like and what's going to land, what's not going to land. And a lot of that has been trial and error. Is this price going to be it? Nope, no, okay, that's not it. What about this price? And for me, I think that that's been a lot of where my biggest lessons have been.
Of course, sales is a very important aspect of business. You can do a lot to learn about it, but you have to do with people. But let me ask you another question. What's the biggest learning in business and in life?
I think that the biggest learning, especially since I've taken the leap to be just fully a business owner, has been to be comfortable with the uncomfortable. I had a dear friend of mine give me that advice once where she's just like, just be prepared to just be uncomfortable for like ever. And I'm like, okay. And I think that once I found that piece of, okay, it's going to be uncomfortable and it's going to be okay, it's helped me in my own life. I've got a 4-year-old daughter and I'm like, you know what? You're making me uncomfortable right now, but I still love you and that's okay.
I can definitely relate to that. Yeah, starting over, I've been a business owner for like more than 20 years. I've been general
Yeah.
manager of a global organization, so I definitely can relate to that. And sure, yeah, a lot of people think that they're going to be much more in their comfort zone, but it's not. You have to push yourself to do things that you want to do and learn things that you don't have any idea about. And what is actually, who has been the best coach you ever had and why?
I've been really fortunate that I have some very close friends who have taken the entrepreneurship journey ahead of me. And they've been, especially my two best friends, my one friend, her and her husband have been very successful and they've been a great resource for me. They've been able to give me a lot of input, a lot of tips. She's actually the one that told me that be comfortable with the uncomfortable. And then my other friend was kind of in one of those leading of the online businesses, website designer type items. And she's just been such a great resource for me, especially as I'm like, I need to tweak my marketing materials. And she's like, I got you, girl. So I've been really fortunate to have those close and inspirational women in my life.
Yeah, it's a great impact on your life and your family and everything. And you
Yeah.
must have learned a lot of things throughout this journey. What would
Yes.
you say you have learned about yourself during this journey?
I think that the thing I've learned most about myself is that I can actually do anything, that, really your limits aren't there. And I think for so long I know, right? And it is, but it is. And I came from such, an environment if you work for these companies and they just put you down and put you down. And it's like finally when I said enough was enough and I broke free of that, it was like, oh my God, I'm awesome, And it's like, but we're all awesome. And it's like every time I meet someone who's like having that day, I'm like, well, just don't deal with it. Figure out what your dreams are, go after them. Like you can literally do anything you want. You just have to believe in it and go after
I totally agree. Yeah, the business brings out the maximum out of you. It brings out what you don't imagine that you've been able to do.
it.
And
Yeah.
yeah, this is something that I totally agree with you on. And tell me about the future. How does the future look like? And what do you see as the main challenges moving forward?
I have big future dreams for myself and my business, and I think that the main challenges will be to kind of sort out the roads to get there. I mean, like I said, trying to figure out all the puzzle pieces of, okay, yeah, I listened to this podcast a few years ago, and it was right at the beginning of my journey. And it's interesting when you can look back and really reflect on that. And I went back and I actually read my journal entry from that day, and it made mention of it of, when you start, you see this beautiful big picture of what you want. And, though it's still a little fuzzy, it's there. And you can almost see it clearly, but you've got all of this mess that's just right in front of you that's standing between your point A and your point B. And it's almost like a puzzle. It is. It's grabbing all these things and, okay, does this piece work? Nope, nope, that one didn't work. It kind of worked for a minute, but it didn't lead on to that one. So then it's pivoting and, okay, what is this puzzle piece going to look like? And what is that? And then and then all of a sudden you find stuff that click and you're like, oh yes, next level. So then you kind of move on and go through the lesson. So I don't know. It's just, I don't know exactly what everything's going to look like, but I have my idea of what it looks like. And I'm just kind of building my puzzle pieces for the road to get there.
Do you have any advice you want to say to anyone thinking of going into a business?
It's just do it. If you've got a clear picture and you've got the passion for it, don't be afraid. Just jump into the mess and start creating your own story, because it's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be weird. You're going to be pulling your hair out and you're like, oh my God, what am I even doing? But then you have like the next day or even the next hour after you have those moments, it's like the most beautiful realization. And just, I don't know, it's a beautiful journey. And just my best advice is to just don't wait, just do it. I wish it's like, it's so hard to say, like, I wish I could have done it earlier, because I know that I had to do what I needed to do to get to the place where I am now, because I wouldn't have done it if I had done it differently. But it's just start building your plan and just jump into it, and don't be scared, because it is going to be uncomfortable, and it is scary, but the end result and what you learn from it is going to be so beautiful and so rewarding.
Outstanding. Definitely, anyone should be jumping into business. It's the world is full of abundance and opportunities, and you should try to find your place as young as you are. So I would agree with you on that. And let me ask you, going back to starting your own business again, what would you do differently?
That's so hard, because it's like I could go back, and yes, like I am still a little bit on the newer side of it. I think that the only thing I would really do differently was to not second guess myself. I think that right at the very beginning, I had this idea of what I wanted, which is where I am now, but I second guessed myself, and it took me a little bit longer because of that to, get all of those things. And it's just like, oh, this is what I wanted to do at the beginning. Why didn't I just do this? So I wish, if I had to go back and restart all over again, and say, no, girl, just stick with that. It's going to work. Just go for it.
And for our newsletter, do you have any offers to include for our audience today that you want to share with us?
So for my offers, the one thing I can do is that when I do provide retainer services a lot of the times, and with that includes a strategy session. So my free offer would be a free 1 hour strategy session, like I would do with my retainer clients, where we can go in, really pinpoint your actual pain points that you have. And see if you have any priorities, and create a development. I come from a background of I used to run operations for a construction company, so I used to oversee project management. So I can help kind of develop, a progress tracker, and give you the tools that you need to make sure that you actually complete your project of developing your organizational documentation.
Thank you. That's been very generous of you, and we really advise everyone to take this opportunity and take it serious and think about it, because a strategy session would be great. And I really appreciate having this interview with us and spending this time with our team over here. You've been great help for everybody, and I really appreciate you coming today. Thank you very much, Erin.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Thank you.
Have a good
Bye.
one. Bye.
You too.